Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a live happening right here in the heart of the all-American city. You are looking at a live helicopter shot of the top of a gigantic mushroom of balloons to be released at 2 p.m. And this is only one of 4 cameras we'll be using to cover this event.
Balloonfest 86, a publicity stunt held in Cleveland, Ohio in the September of 1986, with the goal of redefining the city's reputation and fundraising for United Way of Cleveland, a charity for health and human services. Basically, they helped fund local communities and institutions, etc., etc. But how did they go about achieving these 2 goals, you ask? Well, by pulling off the largest balloon release ever, sending out a whopping 2 million balloons into the sky, and in the process of doing so, earning the city a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records. All of this was tightly coordinated by Treb Heining, head of balloon art by Treb, an LA-based company, as well as George Fraser, the director of marketing and communications for United Way. The plan was incredibly simple. Release just over 2 million balloons across the city, and then sit back and enjoy. The previous December, Disneyland California had released approximately 1 million balloons, and so Treb took it upon himself to try and one-up them. But that's not exactly what happened. You see, Treb and his team had spent 6 months planning for the fundraiser. George had even enlisted the help of local school children, who had raised money for the event by selling sponsorships. Every $1 donated equated to approximately 2 balloons being released. Closer to the actual launch date, they had even sectioned off a 250 by 150 foot perimeter in the center of Cleveland's public square, which they fenced off with 3 stories of scaffolding walls and suspended a custom-made net over the entire enclosure. Inside, 2,500 volunteers toiled away filling, tying, and releasing balloons into the overhead net. Saturday, the 27th of September 1986 rolled around, and it was time for the big balloon launch. So, what happened next? Well, I'll tell you. Settle down. But first, I want to take a sec to tell you about a game you might have heard of. Now, I've always enjoyed collecting stuff like Lego, Warhammer, or just virtual items in games I play. Raid helps scratch that itch perfectly. Since downloading Raid a few months ago, I'm really starting to build a solid collection of champions now. So let's go and open some shards to collect some more. Ah, he's cool. I love his little cracked skull. That's so sick. We've got Mr. Samurai Beetle Man. Very cool. Oh, alright, this guy's my favorite. The great thing is, if you get a champion you really like, you can keep them and level them up, or if you're not keen, you can sacrifice them to level the ones you do like. Shards are a great way of getting the champions you love. If you haven't started playing yet, click my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses available only via my link. You will immediately get a huge starter pack with an epic champion, Tagoar, from the Orc faction, also available to returning players through my separate welcome back link in the description, only available on mobile. And you'll get another starter pack after reaching level 15 that includes an epic Grizzled Jarl from the Dwarves faction as well. Download Raid today using my link and use promo code MonkeyKing to get a legendary Sun Wukong completely for free. This is only available until the end of November, so be quick. Also, remember to join my clan Loaf Bakers. But back to the video. The launch day was here, and thousands of people gathered in the area to enjoy the festivities, either directly helping or watching from the sidelines. By the time of the actual event, Treb and George had raised over $1.5 million for the United Way of Cleveland. $1.4 million to be exact. Very impressive. But what happened next was anything but. By around 1 p.m, close to 1.5 million balloons had been filled, and the launch was quickly coming up at 2 p.m. But there was just one problem. The local weather forecast predicted a major rainstorm approaching that would coincidentally hit just past 2 p.m. And so there were two choices. Either call off the event and keep the balloons safely nestled within the net, or the arguably much more epic option of saying fuck it and releasing them anyway. And so, not wanting to seem like an absolute square, George, in correspondence with Treb and the other local event organisers, made the call. They would release them right before the storm hit, hoping that by the time of the storm, the balloons would have drifted off into greener pastures. 1:50 p.m. rolls around, and just over 1.5 million balloons are filled. Treb and George make the call to release the balloons. The net is lifted and the swarm rises up, surrounding the central terminal tower. The sky is filled with colour, the streets filled with cheer, and soon the local environment would be filled with a multicoloured latex nightmare. At around 2 p.m, the skies darken, and rain begins to cover the hordes of volunteers and onlookers. The rainstorm had arrived. Now, typically balloons released in the air would stay in the sky long enough to fully deflate, meaning that when they did eventually drop back down to the ground, they would be smaller and way less concentrated in one area, making cleanup almost negligible. However, once the rain cloud hit, the wind, cool air and rain was enough to drop them back down onto the city while still inflated. It may sound hyperbolic, but from what I've seen and read, balloons seem to be nearly everywhere, descending down onto busy traffic, causing innumerable accidents, spilling into rivers and waterways, and even disrupting takeoffs and landings as they fell across the local Burke lakefront airport. The balloons were even ensnaring people and carrying them away into the fucking eye of the storm. Okay, that point isn't true, but they were everywhere and even spilled out into the sea. But here's where things get really bad. A day prior, on the 26th of September, Raymond Broderick and his friend Bernard Sulzer took their boat out onto local Lake Erie, as was typical of them to do so. However, by the 27th, they still hadn't returned. Worried, their families went to local authorities and rallied a search party. Coincidentally, right around the same time, the balloon launch had just occurred, and by the time the Coast Guards had sent out search helicopters and boats, they were met by thousands upon thousands of balloons littering the lake. Given how futile the balloons had made the whole search, 2 days later on the 29th of September, the Coast Guards called off the search, with Raymond and Bernard's bodies sadly washing ashore not long after. It's hard to say if, without the balloon disaster, Raymond and Bernard might have been found sooner, potentially even resulting in them surviving. According to Roger Rice of the Coast Guard District 9 for the city, Balloonfest did not have anything to do with the unfortunate deaths of both these men. But despite this, the wife of one of the men sued United Way of Cleveland for $3.2 million. They eventually settled on undisclosed terms. Similarly, balloons had also reached out as far as Medina County, almost 50 miles away, and had descended upon a field, startling the owner's expensive Arabian horses, leading to them inflicting permanent injuries on themselves. The owner sued for $100,000, but like the fisherman's wife, they eventually settled on undisclosed terms. Now, unfortunately, due to the legal action taken against United Way, the fundraiser actually ended up losing money. However, they still made the Guinness Book of World Records, so there is that, I suppose. But what happened in the following weeks to the balloons? Well, cleanup was messy, taking several weeks to clear fully, and that was just for the balloons still in Cleveland. Most had actually blown out over to Canada. Now, obviously Canada wasn't too happy about that, but the general attitude was, tee-hee, well, it's your guys' problem now, have fun. Of course, rightfully so, these days it would be seen as an environmental disaster, but I guess it was a very different time back then, way more lax than what we're used to now. But ultimately, with these two cases, it's pretty easy to assume that at least some level of guilt was upon Treb, George and the United Way of Cleveland. After all, they had made the call to release the balloons despite knowing there was a storm coming. But how could our two lads have foreseen the disaster that would unfold? Plus, it's pretty hard to fault two men whose only apparent intentions were simply to raise money for a good cause. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for today's video. I'm really trying hard to get back onto some more frequent uploads, but you know how life is. That being said, I do have some very interesting projects in the works at the minute that I can't wait to show you. Also, remember to download Raid using the links in the description below to claim some time-limited rewards only available until the end of November. But with that being said, thank you as always for watching. Until next time.